Great, thank you. Welcome everyone to today's session looking at the outcomes of the recent review of qualification reform in England. My name is Ria Barter and I lead on stakeholder engagement at Pearson. Really pleased to be here with you all today, and I'm joined by my colleague Suzanne Hall as well. And we know there have been a lot of queries and anxiety about what the curriculum offer will look like, particularly for 2025, that's fast approaching. So we're hopeful that you'll get all of your questions answered today. Feel free to pop them into the chat or use the raise hand function. We will be having dedicated time at the end of today's session specifically for Q&A. So don't worry if we haven't covered something you may have a question about. We will try to make sure we cover them at the end. And if there are any questions we can't answer on the day, we will get back to you with a response as soon as possible after today's event. So I'll make a start. So just in terms of the agenda for today's session, so I'll be talking you through a little bit about the background to the reform programme. I'm aware that people have different levels of awareness of what's going on, and to be honest, there have been so many different announcements over the past few years, it's hard to keep up at the best of times. So we thought it would be useful just to do a little bit around that. Then main purpose of the session will really focus around what the outcomes of the December announcement in relation to what's being known as the rapid review and what that means for the different subject areas. Then looking at who is impacted, what are the implications for the different sub-cohorts affected. Then looking really at a subject level and what actions are required as a result of decisions having been made as part of the rapid review. Then I'll be handing over to Suzanne, who will be talking you through what our new post-16 level 2 offer looks like. Then we'll be looking at the guidance and support that's available for you during this time, looking at next steps for Pearson, and then I'll be handing over back to Suzanne, who will talk you through the offer available and support available for our new T-level programmes, because we understand many of you will also be interested in that too. So just in terms of the context for the reform and just looking at some of the kind of milestones that have led us to where we are today. So back in 2021, the Department for Education published the much awaited response to the level 3 consultation, and as part of that response they indicated what they felt the future policy direction would be under the previous government, in that there would be academic and technical pathways alongside the new T-level programmes. And for the academic pathway are qualifications that are primarily intended for progression to HE. So that includes A-levels and the new alternative academic qualifications, so AAQs for short, as we're referring to them. It also indicated there would be a technical pathway, and that would contain qualifications that are primarily intended for entry into skilled employment or into related technical training, and they would be aligned to the occupational standards for those particular subject areas. It also outlines that there would be a streamlining of qualifications in the future at level 3 and below, starting with those qualifications which had low or no enrolments. Now, in 2022, this started to gain momentum with the level 3 criteria and kind of level 2 criteria published for outlining what reformed qualifications would need to look like. And as part of the criteria, also published a list of what are called Cycle 1 subject areas, and also sizes that exam boards can put forward for that Cycle 1 submission. And the idea being that these qualifications would be developed in line with the new criteria and have longer term funding available for them. It also announced back in 2022 the defunding of a number of low and no enrolment qualifications. So that doesn't affect a lot of BTEC nationals, but there has been some tidying up where there are less than 100 enrolments, for example, on specific qualifications, and qualifications have been retired. So in 2023, there were further phases of defunding of existing qualifications announced, and that included also qualifications that overlapped with Wave 1 to Wave 4 T-level programmes. So quite significant there, because we're starting to see a lot more potential change, and all of this was done under the previous government, which I keep reiterating, and you'll understand why shortly. But back in 23, exam boards had the opportunity to submit qualifications in the Cycle 1 subject areas at both Level 3 and 2 for approval to the department. Now, in 2024, so just last year, in April and September last year, we heard the outcome of our respective submissions. We're really pleased to see that what we put forward for Level 2 and for 3 in the Cycle 1 subject areas had been approved. And this session will also cover what qualifications sit within that. Now, as you all know, back in July last year, a new government was elected, and here is where we start to see a shift in the policy landscape. So one of the first things that had been announced was that there would be a temporary pause to the submission of Cycle 2 subjects for both Levels 2 and 3. And so that pause was introduced, and also importantly, it announced the postponement of defunding of qualifications that were due to be defunded from August 24. And so that included, for example, a small number of our Level 3 childcare and construction qualifications. And so those have been continued to be funded for the current academic year. It also announced, importantly, and this is where the focus of this session is today, what's being called as a rapid review. So a review of specifically of Level 3 qualifications to determine which ones would be potentially funded in the longer term. And it's a departure from the previous government's kind of policy for defunding qualifications in this space, because the new government just wanted to take stock and review decisions that had been made under the previous government. Now, importantly, the new government also announced a second review, which is known as the Curriculum and Assessment Review. Now, this review is much wider in scope. The rapid review focused very much on Level 3 qualifications in the vocational space that were due to be defunded in 2025 under the previous government. Whereas the Curriculum and Assessment Review is much wider. It covers Key Stage 1 all the way up through to Key Stage 5 and includes both general and vocational qualifications. And that particular review is very much focused on looking at the longer term curriculum and assessment landscape, and that's being led by Professor Becky Francis. And we'll talk a little bit about that second review shortly during this session. Also, towards the end of last year, under the new government, the Department for Education announced what the outcomes were to appeals put forward by exam boards for qualifications that had previously been listed for defunding due to perceived overlap with the Wave 4 T-level. So quite a lot going on and quite a lot of kind of changes kind of happening in this space. Now, in terms of the first review, which is very much the focus of a lot of this session today, so it's referred to in shorthand as the DfE Rapid Review, as it were, because it was conducted over basically the space of one academic term, so autumn term last year. And Jackie Smith published an article in FE Week which outlined the scope of what the review would cover and involve. And so critically, it announced that this review would be very much focused on qualifications that had been previously listed under the last government to be defunded from 2025 onwards. And this includes qualifications that fall into two categories. So firstly, qualifications that appeared on one of the overlap lists with T-level, so it was deemed to overlap with Wave 1 to Wave 4 T-level areas, and it also included all qualifications at level 3 within what's called cycle 1 subjects, and we'll look at what that looks like shortly, but all qualifications at level 3 in cycle 1 subjects that were not approved under the new level 3 criteria for AAQs and technical qualifications. So it's very much focused on a subset of level 3 qualifications. Now, finally, in December, you will have heard the Department for Education announced what the outcome of this rapid review was. We've included here on the slides, which you'll get a copy of after today's event, links to the various documentations and their official announcement. One of the most helpful documents from that list would be the FAQ documents, because that looks at every single different subject area and outlines the announcements that were made in relation to that. But in terms of some of the headline outcomes of the review, it indicated that 200 odd qualifications would be defunded where they had low or no enrolments, i.e. less than 100 enrolments over the past 3 consecutive years. But most importantly, and I think this will be welcomed by many in the sector, they indicated that they would be retaining 157 qualifications that were previously scheduled to be defunded for 2025. And this would be for an additional year or 2 years, depending on the subject area. Because a key thing to note about the outcomes of the rapid review, it was conducted very much on a subject by subject basis. Now, this does add a degree of complexity because there is no blanket rule across all the different subject areas, and each subject varies slightly as to what the offer will look like and when changes start to occur. And it's very much linked to whether or not there is a T-level in that area, and if it's one of the earlier T-levels or kind of one of the later ones due to be introduced kind of down the line. Now, another piece of very important good news that came out from the review last term was that under the previous government, the Department for Education had indicated that they would be introducing a new rule for the rules of combination for study programmes, and indicated under the previous government it would not be possible to take more than one AAQ type qualification alongside A-levels. Now, under the new government and the outcome of the recent rapid review is that there will no longer be rules around study programmes. So it remains in the hands of schools and colleges to determine what the most appropriate study programme package is for their students, which is really good news because they're the ones interacting with students and best understand their progression needs and interests. Now, this review also indicated that it's providing now clarity up to 2027 because it indicates and reaches up to the end of July 2027. The idea being that the curriculum assessment review will then determine what qualifications look like from academic year starting 2027 onwards. So it gives clarity for the next 2 forthcoming academic years, which I think will really be welcomed by the sector. So before we do a deep dive into what the outcomes look like for the different subject area, I thought it would be worthwhile just to make it very clear as to who and who isn't impacted by the recent reform announcement and what that then means for the different kind of sub-cohorts taking level 3 qualifications at present. So Wales and Northern Ireland, for example, are not impacted by the DfE reforms, which only affect England. So centres in those nations can continue teaching the existing qualifications with confidence, and qualifications have been extended and made available in both Wales and Northern Ireland for both 2025 and also 2026. And we've included a link there to the updated funding guide for those nations. Now, for those independent schools and colleges in England who are privately funded, they will also continue to have access to the existing qualifications, as we will not be kind of retiring them unless they have kind of very low enrolments, which we'll review on a regular basis. But in the main, they will still continue to be available, even if public funding is removed from individual qualifications in England, we'll still make them available for those who want to take them up. This reform also doesn't affect the Isle of Man and the Channel Islands, so existing qualifications remain available for 2 further years. And all of these changes also do not impact those who are apprentices in England, for example, because they are funded through a different stream, whereas this reform is about those taking qualifications within the 16 to 19 space and are funded as kind of as standalone qualifications rather than taking as part of an apprenticeship. So those who are taking existing BTEC qualifications as part of an apprenticeship, they are not being impacted by some of the changes to funding that we are going to talk through. So all of these groups that are listed here on this slide can continue teaching the existing qualifications with confidence. So what are the different funding implications then for centres in England? So one of the key outcomes of the review was that the newly approved AAQ qualifications, alternative academic qualifications and technical qualifications in Cycle 1 subjects would continue to be available for first teaching September 2025. Now, a kind of linked outcome in relation to that and one of the consequences of the review is that this also therefore means that all existing RQF BTEC nationals at the AS and 1 A-level equivalent size, so that's 180 or 360 guided learning hour qualifications, all of those in linked Cycle 1 subject areas will remain defunded as had been indicated by the previous government from July 2025. The idea being that they will be replaced by the newly approved AAQ and technical qualifications. As I mentioned previously as well, the study programme rule has now been scrapped, so centres can continue to determine what the most appropriate curriculum package is for their individual cohorts. And as I also previously mentioned, each subject area has been reviewed on its individual merit. So it does vary slightly sector by sector. Now, Level 2, Cycle 1 qualifications that were newly approved, you'll be pleased to know that they will also continue to be available for first teach September 2025. Now, what does this mean then at individual kind of sector and subject level? Because as I mentioned previously, each one is different as a result of the recent review. Now, a really helpful resource I wanted to draw your attention to is the Pearson Level 3 Qualifications Funding Guide. And we've included a link here on this particular slide, but we've included also an extract from that guide because it goes into individual qualification levels. So it gives the qualification number, the title, guided learning hours for that programme, and then indicates what the funding picture is in England for the current academic year and the next 2 coming academic years. So this will equip you to be able to kind of plan your curriculum with confidence and have an idea of what will and won't be available over the next couple of years. Now, it's important to note that the Department for Education will be updating their list of qualifications to be approved for funding. This hasn't yet been updated yet. We expect that to be done by the end of January, so watch this space. But please don't feel anxiety if you're looking at the funding link at present and can't see that qualifications you're delivering to have continued funding. It's just a case of the government databases haven't yet been updated, but they will be in due course. In the interim, you can look at our Level 3 qualification funding guide for a steer as to what will and won't be available. Now, we thought it'd be worthwhile just to kind of go over subjects which have the good news of confirmed funding for the next 2 academic years. So that includes subjects including business, the creative arts, so media, art and design, music and performing arts, also land and animal management subject area. Importantly includes sport, travel and tourism, esports, uniform protective services and hospitality. So all of the sizes within those subject areas will remain available and funding for the next 2 coming academic years. And you'll be able to see that level of detail in our new funding guide. So good news for those subject areas who can carry on teaching the existing qualifications with confidence. So what does that mean? So you can continue to register your students on the existing qualifications. There are no changes to how you register your students, and they will be funded until at least the end of July 2027. And then it will be for the curriculum and assessment review to inform what the funding picture looks like beyond that date. And that's due to report at the end, or I think later in autumn this calendar year. So we'll be updating you as we progress as well through the year. Now, as I mentioned previously, new AAQ qualifications will be available for First Teach September 25. So that includes these 8 qualifications listed on this slide. So all of these qualifications, you'll know, are extended certificates, which mean they're 1 A-level equivalent in size. Just to draw your attention to the final title on that slide, medical science. That's the new title for what was previously known as applied human biology. It's still very much at its core a human biology qualification. It just has an updated title there. So all of these will be available and funded, and it's important to note, so for those centres in England delivering the 1 A-level equivalent of the existing qualifications in these subject areas, they will need to switch over to these new qualifications come September 25. So looking then which subject areas have what we call bespoke funding arrangements, and the reason why we've labelled it as bespoke funding arrangements is because within the different subject areas they vary slightly depending on the size of qualification and also the academic year. It's not as straightforward as the previous slide with business and sport, where all sizes have been given continued funding for the next 2 academic years. Here it's slightly a mixed picture, and we'll go through the detail of what that looks like. So firstly, what that means for health and social care. So here on this slide, we've indicated the different sizes available, so 5 different sizes available. So you can see if we start off with the 180 guided learning hour size qualification, so that's an AS size qualification. This is funded in the current academic year. However, it will be defunded for new enrolments for the coming academic year, and therefore it won't be available from that point onwards. It also, so for those students who are registered on the certificate size in this current academic year, with the intention of looking to top up to what's called the extended certificate size in year 2, you'll notice that the existing extended certificate size, the 1 A-level equivalent with 360 guided learning hours, is not funded also for 2025, because the idea being that the new AAQ qualification will be available and funded instead. Therefore, those who are doing like a top-up model with the certificate size in this academic year, looking to top up to an extended certificate size in year 2, they will actually need to transfer their students from the certificate size to the extended certificate size before the end of July 2025. So that's a key difference to note. And it's important that I'm stressing transfer as opposed to top up, because transfers can happen at any time at any point of the academic year, whereas top-ups require a result to be issued first before they can be actioned. And so because results won't be issued until kind of August time, it's not possible to do a top-up. So it's really important, given the end of funding of the existing extended certificate size for students to be transferred over before the end of July 25. So as I mentioned, the new AAQ comes into play and is funded from 2025 onwards. And then if we look then at the 1.5 A-level equivalent size foundation diploma, that is funded in the existing year, but it's not funded from 2025 onwards. So that's also a key thing to note. In relation to the two larger sizes, the 2 A-level equivalent, the diploma size, they are funded for an additional year, which is really good news. So they'll be funded for 2025, 2026. However, the department has indicated that they will not be funded for 2026, 2027. The idea being, from their perspective, that students will be transitioning over to the new T-levels in health and science instead. So a key point to note is that because the new AAQ qualification does not nest within the existing RQF qualifications, those students who are wanting to do a 2-year programme starting in 25 must be registered on the size they're intending to complete at the end of 2 years. So, for example, they will need to start on an extended diploma or a diploma size, depending on which one is the final intended outcome. So you'll see from this slide that there will be provision available at the 1, 2, and 3 A-level equivalent sizes in some format for the coming academic year. But there is a degree of complexity involved because different sizes are potentially being defunded at different points. And so that's just important to bear in mind for curriculum planning. So it's a similar picture in terms of applied science and forensic science. So I'll just talk you through. I won't go through as much detail as in health and social care because it's very similar to the picture there. So with applied science, again, the AS equivalent size is currently funded in this academic year. However, both AS and 1 A-level equivalent size, the extended certificate size, will no longer be funded from 2025 onwards. The idea being that students will take the new AAQ qualification that has recently been approved instead, because that will be funded from 2025 onwards. Now, in terms of the foundation diploma, like health and social care, that is similarly impacted in that it will not be funded from 2025 onwards. However, the diplomas and extended diploma sizes in applied science will be funded for a further academic year. So for the coming academic year, 2025-2026, it will be funded. It is expected to lose its funding for new enrolments, however, from 2026 onwards, idea being that students will transition over to the new T-level programs, as I mentioned. In forensics, it's a slightly similar picture, except we don't have the smaller sizes available, as you already know, for those of you delivering forensic science. So all 3 sizes there, the foundation diploma, diploma and extended diploma, that will have a further year of additional funding. We have heard in the case of forensic science that the department is looking at whether there's a need for additional qualifications to be funded in the longer term. We haven't yet seen any detail on that in terms of what sizes or what type of qualification, for example, whether it be an AAQ or a technical. But once we have detail around that, we'll let you know because that will inform your curriculum planning for the longer term. But in the interim, it will have a year of additional funding. Again, the situation that I outlined with health and social care in terms of the AAQ not nesting within the existing kind of BTEC qualifications does impact here as well in terms of applied science. So it's important from 2025, students are registered on the overall size that they're intending to complete at the end of 2 years. So the diploma or extended diploma size, if a centre has historically delivered a kind of 1+1 kind of top-up model. But again, it's about transferring students as opposed to doing what's called a top-up, because the funding runs out, for example, on the extended certificate size that currently exists by the end of July 2025. So do take note of that. So what does this mean in terms of applied human biology? So as you may be aware, we recently had our medical science qualification approved, which is the successor to our existing applied human biology qualifications. That will be available from 2025 onwards. That does mean that the existing legacy qualifications won't be funded for new enrolments in England from 2025 onwards. So it's important to bear that in mind. So those who are already on the certificate size wanting to top up to the existing extended certificate in human biology, they will need to transfer before the end of July. So that's important to bear in mind. So what that means in terms of applied psychology, so the great news is that these qualifications will have an additional year of funding for 2025, but they're expected to be defunded for 2026 onwards. So again, it's important when in the next academic year, so 2025, to register students on the size that they're intending to complete at the end of the 2-year programme. So what does this mean for early years? So early years is slightly different to the kind of previous subject areas that I've just been talking about, in that because the T-level in this area is relatively well established now. It's been running for nearly 5 years, but it's one of the most successful subject areas, and therefore a lot of the existing larger sized childcare qualifications therefore will be defunded, as had previously been outlined by the last government, and the new government is in agreement with that. So you'll notice on this slide, for the forthcoming year, 2025, a lot of the existing qualifications will not be available and will be defunded. The key exception being our new AAQ qualification in early childhood development that we've had recently approved, and that's at the 1 A-level equivalent size. So for those wanting to progress directly into work as an early years educator and count in the kind of staff to children ratios within early years settings delivering the EYFS, they will need to do either the T-level or the apprenticeship in that space, because that will be the only large qualifications available to students wanting to go into that area. For those wanting to do just a small qualification alongside other qualifications, then our AAQ will be available. So what does this mean in terms of IT and computing? So this is a similar situation to health and social care and applied science, but except it's got additional, you'll see here that with the smaller sizes, so the certificate and the extended certificate sizes, they will still be defunded from 2025 onwards. Both IT and computing have new AAQs available, and they will be funded from 2025 onwards. In terms of the larger size qualification, so the foundation diploma size, they, like health and social care and applied science, will be defunded from 2025 onwards. However, the larger sizes, the diploma, the 2 A-level equivalent, and the extended diploma, the 3 A-level equivalent, both IT and computing will have an additional year of funding available for the coming academic year, so for 2025-2026. And so similarly, like with health and social care and applied science, it's very important to think about the point at which you need to transfer students onto the correct size of programme, because the new AAQ qualifications do not nest within the existing BTEC RQF qualifications. So this slide also just provides dates to be aware of, particularly in relation for IT and computing for the different sizes. So what does this mean for engineering? So engineering, you'll see, is quite different to some of the recent subjects I've been talking about, and is more of a good news story. You'll see most of the engineering qualifications have been extended for a further 2 years, and that's on the basis that the occupational standards underpinning the new T-level programme are due to be updated, and which will then have a knock-on impact on the T-level programme, which will need to be updated too. As a result of that, to give some stability to the subject area, the vast majority of qualifications within the engineering space have been extended to the end of July 2027. So that's great news. You can continue to teach those qualifications with confidence. There are a couple of qualifications where there are exceptions, and those have been highlighted in the kind of pink salmony colour. So the extended certificate, the 1A level equivalent size, which has now been kind of replaced by the new AAQ qualification, which is intended to fill that gap, and then also diplomas in electrical and electronic engineering, as well as our diploma in mechanical engineering. And the rationale for that is just those two specific qualifications didn't meet the criteria for qualifications to be funded in the longer term, because they had less than 100 enrolments outside of the apprenticeship for the past 3 consecutive years. However, there are, as you can see from this slide, we do have many other engineering qualifications available, including the general pathway, which should hopefully still meet that need for those students who may have wanted to have taken those 2 particular qualifications. So a lot more stability for this subject area, but again, in the longer term, do need to consider about a point at which you transfer students and reviewing that. And there's some advice and guidance on that at the bottom of this slide. So what does this mean in terms of construction? So with construction, this is quite similar to early years because the T-level programmes have been up for a number of years and are quite established. So you'll notice that quite a lot of the existing construction qualifications within the BTEC portfolio are due to be defunded from 2025 onwards. The one exception being is our new AAQ qualification at the 1A level size. So again, like with early years, you do need to consider the point at which you transfer students onto the right sized programme, and the support from 2025 onwards to register students either on the AAQ, or if they need a large size qualification, then the T-level programme for their particular specialism. So we also just wanted to highlight what this specifically meant for those of you who may be delivering the personal trainer qualifications. So as I mentioned on an earlier slide, all level 3 sport qualifications remain funded and available until at least July 2027. There is one big key exception which we're highlighting, and that's the National Diploma in Sport, Fitness and Personal Training. And the funding for that is due to end for new enrolments at the end of July 25. And that's because it's being replaced by the new technical occupational qualification, which is the new BTEC Level 3 technical occupational entry for personal trainer diplomas as qualification. So that's the specification for that is already up and available on our website. So again, with this particular kind of subspecialism within sport, so the personal trainer field, it's important to consider the point at which you need to transfer students where they're doing where they historically were doing a top-up model. So those intending to progress onto the diploma size in the coming academic year, they will need to transfer before the end of July this year in order to secure funding. So just to thought it'd be worthwhile, it's good practice, as you may be aware, just to always check whether a qualification is funded for your particular region and purpose of study in terms of study programme, as for example, is the student doing it as part of a standalone programme or doing it as part of apprenticeship. We've included here a link to the EFSA database, and that contains details of which qualifications are and aren't funded. And obviously that includes everyone's qualifications, not just the Pearson BTEC qualifications. A key point, however, we wanted to flag is that it was last updated on the 18th of November. So it is out of date. It doesn't reflect the December announcement and everything that I've just said. We expect that to be updated by the Department of Education over the next couple of months. We haven't been given a firm date on that. So don't panic in the interim period if you don't see your qualification listed. Do just feel free to reach out to us if you've got a question about one of our qualifications, for example. Most of the information, if not all that you need, will be in our funding guide that I mentioned earlier on in the session. But I'll hand over now to Suzanne.
Thanks, Ria. Afternoon, everybody. As Ria said, my name is Suzanne Hall. So I lead on the post-16 level 2 suite, also T levels as well, plus functional skills, and the level 1 and below BTEC portfolio. So you're going to be really, really thankful that there's very little change going on with regards to level 2 at the minute. It's an awful less complicated than what Ria's just gone through. Now, the main reason is because, as Ria's just iterated to you, we've had this rapid review for level 3. The rapid review really did just only focus in on level 3. So therefore, level 2 and below is actually, we're waiting for the response for the curriculum and assessment review. Now we should get, it was doing this last week, really. It's just obviously got an automatic thing that jogs the slide on. So you just have to keep nudging it back a little bit. We're expecting, with regards to the curriculum and assessment review, we're expecting a high-level announcement to come from the Department for Education, probably in the spring. So that's really any time between March and May. That will only give us high-level findings. We won't get the full detail of it until the autumn of this year. So in terms of level 2, I'm going to say you're probably reasonably safe to say that everything I'm going to tell you probably won't even shift until at least autumn. So the DfE have approved funding for the qualifications that we submitted as part of cycle 1 for level 2 for post-16, and this is only post-16, it's not key stage 4. We only submitted 5 qualifications, and they are all technical occupational entry qualifications. We don't know what's going on. Okay, so you can see those on the screen. You can see the new BTECs listed on the left-hand side, and you can see the current provision that these new ones are replacing on the right-hand side. Now, in the main, these are direct like-for-like replacements. The only brand new qualification to the offer is the second one down on the left, which is the technical occupational entry for lean manufacturing operatives. That will become part of our wider engineering suite. But otherwise, everything else is a direct replacement. The new early years practitioner's qualification replaces the current CPLD early years practitioner qual. And then we've got 3 sport qualifications. There's gym instructor, there's leading community activity, and there's recreation assistant. And they all replace the current industry skills qualifications that we have in that environment. Again, all for post-16 and adults. So as I said, they're all a direct replacement. The specifications for these are all online. I've put a link in there with regards to the new BTEC technical that replaces them. Anybody who is delivering the current BTEC offer here will have auto approval, and you'll just roll over onto the new delivery of the new qualifications. But as I said, there's very little change to a lot of them. The 3 sport ones are pretty much identical. The early years has got a few extra units in there, but it's not extra content. It's just some of the units that have been broken, split down into 1 unit, split into 2, for example. So for the rest of the BTEC level 2 post-16 portfolio, the funding remains intact and in place. So certainly for academic year 25-26 and 26 and 27, and potentially 27 and 2028. This includes all of our BTEC First qualifications that are available for post-16 level 2, the BTEC Skills Suite and the BTEC Technical Certificate Suite. So they are all still available and operational. And again, the links to the main landing page for post-16 is listed there. However, please do note that some of the BTEC First are already in the process of being withdrawn, particularly the smaller sizes that are primarily delivered at Key Stage 4. But we've kept the larger sizes, so anything certificate and above should remain intact for post-16 to tap into. It wants me to move on, Ria, so I'm going to let it now.
Yes, thanks. Sorry about that, everyone. I'm not sure, there's some kind of gremlin that keeps pushing the slides on, so hopefully we can move on okay. Just in terms of some of the additional guidance and support that's available, so we've updated our website for both our level 3 and level 2 pages, so do look out for that. We've included the links for that. As you may be aware of, we're also holding regular subject-specific briefings, and some of your colleagues may have attended those, or some of yourselves may have attended those recently. We'll be running those through the calendar year. We also have, as you know, for many of our subjects, subject advisors available, and they can provide individual guidance to you and support that you may need with any questions you may have, particularly around curriculum planning. We'll also be providing a lot of support with transferring your students to funded qualifications where that's appropriate, where there are certain qualifications, as I mentioned, potentially being defunded, and we'll be also issuing kind of bespoke communications around that to centres we think affected. And as I mentioned previously, do look out for our level 3 funding guidance booklet. It's super helpful, includes every single level 3 BTEC qualification and what the funding picture looks like for the next 2 coming academic years. Just in terms of some of the next steps, in terms of what's on the horizon. So the department have still paused the submission of cycle 2, level 2 and 3 qualifications. So we're waiting to hear when that will be opened again and when we can put qualifications forward. We understand it'll be sometime, we'll be able to submit them sometime later this year. However, the first teach date has yet to be confirmed. It's likely to be informed by the outcomes of the curriculum and assessment review that I mentioned earlier, and that's due to report in autumn this calendar year. We have heard that the Department of Education will open a new spring submission window for some additional level 3 titles within the subject areas listed on the slide. So applied science and forensic science was one of the examples given, and I think adult care at level 3 was also given as an example. We're still waiting for detail on that, but we will update you on any news on that front, because if there are potential new subjects that can be put forward, we'll be looking to do that where appropriate to make sure we don't have gaps in our provision. For other subject areas, they will be very much informed by the curriculum and assessment review in terms of what the longer term picture looks like beyond kind of 2027. As I mentioned earlier, the recommendations from the curriculum assessment review are due to be published in autumn this year. So hand over back to Suzanne, and hopefully we won't have any strange movement of slides.
And I'm just jinxed. Just a quick update on T levels, because obviously we're aware that a lot of you will be delivering obviously a level 3 portfolio in VQ plus also T levels. So Pearson currently hold the contracts of 10 T levels. We've got a number of them in delivery right now. A couple of them go into delivery for First Teach this coming September. So the marketing T level is for First Teach this coming September, plus also the digital support services and the digital business services. These are the 2 contracts that we are taking over from NCFE. So they're in development right now. We're expecting to go through approval of those qualifications in the next month or so. But again, available for First Teach this coming September. The Generation 2 Wave 2 contracts that that were held and open for offer in the summer of last year. We're waiting the outcome of those. So keep your eyes peeled in the press over the next couple of weeks, because I'm expecting the announcements of those contracts to come forward in the next couple of weeks. So from our point of view, with regards to training and admin support, each of our T levels has got generic administration and training, and that's all held and supported by a central training and admin support page directly linked from our main T-level landing site. On there, you can find all of the admin materials, plus also all of our on-demand training, access to our live training, and also recordings of live training if you haven't been able to attend, and also all of the generic training support materials, because we have specific support materials about supporting assessment and the employer set project that go across all of T levels in a generic fashion. Then for each particular T level, it has its own specification page. And then from that page, you'll find the spec, the SAMs, all the exemplar work, past papers, and all of the other course materials and teaching and learning materials. All of our T levels use our existing Exam Wizard and Results Plus platforms for the core exams. So straight away, as soon as the T level is created, we put the sample assessment material for the core exams into that platform, Exam Wizard. Plus also, once we've got the additional SAM done, we put that into it as well. So you've got the bank of items in there. And then as we go through each series, and there are 2 series a year for the core exams, all of the core exams get put into Exam Wizard as well. So certainly for something like particularly, the digital and the construction and legal, finance and accounting, there's starting now to be a bank of items within Exam Wizard and Results Plus. So if you're familiar with using those 2 systems, it operates exactly the same for T levels for the core exams. Each of our T levels has a subject advisor who you can get support and guidance from. So again, from the specification page, you can access communication with the subject advisor. You can book a support call with them, etc. For a lot of the T levels as well, we have support and training from industry professionals. So, for example, accounting, we've linked up with ACCA, who are the Chartered Institute for Accounting. They provide a lot of teaching and training materials with regards to the subject area of accounting, plus also they give student chartered status to T-level students, and therefore they're supporting that student as they progress through into chartered status, and to be gaining that sort of expertise and employer credibility with regards to getting a job once completing their T-level. Also, we've got other industry partners that will support us with software and support and guidance from that perspective. So again, for accounting, where they have to use a cloud-based software as part of their assessment, we have set up a relationship with Sage, QuickBooks and Xero. So again, accessing cloud-based support through some of the industry professionals as well. For all of our T levels, we do a monthly update with the exception of August. So every month, if you've signed up to the updates, you will get a T level update email dropping into your inbox. These are all stored on the web as an archive as well. But that update gives a sector update with regards to what's happening for that particular T level in that particular sector. But also right at the front of the update, we also give a take action area of the comms, which lists out various things that need to be done in that month. So particularly things around making registrations, making entries, results release, etc. So it's always a useful tool to be able to drop into that particular comms update and see what the actions are for that year. And then finally, off our T-level page, you'll also find a T-level foundation year page as well. So For those of you who are delivering T-level foundation years or a level 2 program to support progression into a T-level, obviously a lot of the BTEC portfolio that we've been talking about in terms of level 2 support the T-level foundation year. Also, of course, English and maths functional skills, digital functional skills, essential digital skills, plus also work skills and personal growth skills. So you can find out more information with regards to how the rest of the BTEC portfolio can support the T-level foundation year. One thing to note, though, that the T-level foundation year is basically just another name for a study program. It's not something that you need to register onto with us at Pearson. If you're delivering the T-level foundation year and you want to use, for example, the BTEC in engineering level 2 as part of it for the technical skills, you just register onto the BTEC as per normal. You don't register onto the T-level foundation year as a thing. It's not a thing in a single entity. And that's all from me, Ria. Thank you.
Thank you.